independent business reporter at the Globe and Mail, and I'm pleased to be your moderator today. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the Globe and Mail headquarters is located on the traditional territory of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, the Métis Nation, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. According to Statistics Canada, women-owned businesses account for 17.5% of private sector businesses in Canada. While the number of businesses owned by women is on the rise, women entrepreneurs commonly face increased challenges surrounding access to capital, mentors, and a support network. Today, I'll be speaking with a panel of accomplished entrepreneurs who will be sharing how they have navigated these challenges. We aren't anticipating any technical issues, but we appreciate your patience should any arise. If you need technical help, please click the help desk icon at the bottom of your screen. During the last 10 minutes of the panel, we'll be answering audience questions. If you have any questions for our panelists, please type them in the virtual Q&A box. And on behalf of the Globe and Mail, I'd like to recognize MasterCard for supporting today's event. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Sasha Krishtek, the president of MasterCard Canada, Joanna Griffiths, the founder and CEO of Nixware, Althea Johnson, the founder of Proper Lifestyle, and Sarah Beth Holden, the co-owner of Red Tape Brewery. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris.
For our first question, I just hope we go around and hear a bit about your businesses. So maybe we can start with Joanna.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the founder and president here at Nix. We are an intimate apparel company, best known for helping create the period underwear or leak-proof underwear category. Started the company a little over a decade ago and have expanded the brand to include activewear, swimwear, wireless bras, a teen line, and we're sold across Canada and the US, both online and through our 15 Nix branded retail stores.
Okay, thank you. And Althea?
My name is Althea, and I'm the founder, curator, and K-beauty expert for Proper Lifestyle. We offer curated Korean skincare products to our customers, both in store and online. And we import our products from Korean brands directly, as well as Korean distributors. And we have been in business for about 5.5 years, going on 6 years. And our location is in the downtown Toronto West on Ossington, and we are planning on opening up a second location in Leslieville in 2024.
Thank you. Sarah Beth.
I'm Sarah Beth. I co-own Red Tape Brewery with my husband, Sean. We are a bespoke craft brewery located in the east end of Toronto in the Upper Beaches. We opened in December 2020 with a goal of creating bespoke beers for our clients who are celebrating life's milestones, weddings, milestone birthdays, retirements. And we also have a tap room where we serve many of our own beers.
All right. And Sasha, could you tell us a bit about maybe your MasterCard's involvement with small businesses?
Sure. So thanks, Chris. And I'm humbled to be here with some very impressive women business owners. And as the only non-independent business owner, I guess, on the call, MasterCard, many of you will know as a payments company. And so for those of you that either have MasterCards in your wallets or accept MasterCards as part of your business, I will say thank you. But the reason we're here and excited to be part of this conversation is we are fundamentally a technology company. We're a technology company that believes in empowering people, empowering economies. And the only way that you can bring that vision to life is by making sure that small businesses, particularly in Canada, where they make up 12% of our GDP and 98% of businesses across Canada, that they are fully supportive and that we build a Canadian economy that is inclusive, diverse, and digital. And all of those things are really critical to small businesses.
All right. Well, let's get started on the discussion. We'll start by talking about capital and access to capital. I know that that's a really big topic whenever I talk to small business owners. Really important part of getting the business started. So if we could just go around, maybe we can start with you, Sarah Beth. Could you tell us a bit about your approach to how you financed your business?
So when we started the brewery, we were both coming in from different industries. We're fairly new to the beer industry. And we had to acquire quite a bit of equipment and build out a space. And so in order to finance that, we had a few of our own dollars. But as we built the plan, we realized how much we needed, and it ended up being a combination of areas that we managed to finance the business through. Government loans, government-backed loans, and different opportunities that were made available for young entrepreneurs. It was just kind of a combination that came through.
All right. And Althea?
So for my business, it was self-funded. My background is pharmaceutical sales. I worked in that industry for 22 years. And I also had investment properties. So when you work in pharmaceutical sales, you're not allowed to have a side business. So I had to make the decision to resign, and I sold one of my investment properties and used that to fund my business. Because my business started off online, it allowed me to sort of start small and grow at a steady pace. So I did that for 2 years before opening up a store, which was also self-funded. But now I'm at the stage with this second location, gaining more knowledge. I, for the first time, have gained working capital by working with my business manager at a bank. So that's where we're at right now.
All right. And Joanna?
Sure. So when I first started Nix, the initial capital that I had was through winning a business venture competition. So entering a business plan competition. So that was the first, $15,000 or so. I then went to Futurepreneur, which is a funding organization within Canada that supports young entrepreneurs, and they define young as 39 and under at the time of applying. And so that was my second tranche of money. And then I went to crowdfunding. So I launched the company in 2013. This is really, I think, at the height of Kickstarter and Indiegogo and those platforms. And those were the initial sources of capital that I used for Nix. I went on over the years to take on some funding from angel investors, and really built a solid plan of being profitable and managing cash. And so was able to translate that first $1 million in capital that we raised to our first $50 million in sales, working with our bank partners, getting operating lines, working with the EDC. I think, Chris, my story here is, when you're building a company, you use every source of capital that you can. It's, as Althea said, it's your savings. It's like working with government institutions if you can to get debt financing. It's working with your banking partners. It's grants, and obviously the other alternative there is investors. And so have taken on equity partners over the years as well.
I was going to say, it sounds like you've been through every source there is in the last decade.
I was going to say beg, borrow, and steal, but that sounds unethical, and I definitely didn't steal. But I do think that, especially being a female founder, you really have to look at all of the available pools of financing that's there, and take matters into your own hands where you can, and that looks a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we can maybe have some advice for anybody watching. Starting maybe with the government side or nonprofits, like you were talking about with Futurepreneur, Joanna and Sarah Beth in particular. Is there advice that you would have for other entrepreneurs who are thinking of approaching those partners for funding?
I can speak to the Futurepreneur side, and then maybe Sarah Beth, if you want to talk about the government funding. So Futurepreneur, and disclaimer, I sit on the board there, so I'm a bit of an evangelist for that organization. But one of the things that I really like about that institution is that they pair you with a mentor, and they actually give you a lot of hands-on support with your business plan as you go through the process. One of my biggest regrets with Nix, and I have, the list is surprisingly not that long, but one of the biggest ones I have is that when I took the initial $15,000 loan from Futurepreneur, I didn't do the add-on $50K capital with BDC. And that really had a lot to do with my lack of financial literacy at the time. I viewed debt as a dirty word. I didn't want to take on that kind of liability on my balance sheet and was really kind of afraid of debt. And what I found over the years is that if you're working with great partners, if you're in control of your business, there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking on debt financing. It's far cheaper than selling a part of your business. And so that would be my advice is I think a lot of people think about equity financing as the first course of business, but actually if you're funding inventory, if you're buying equipment, there's lots of different sources of financing that are geared specifically towards some of those initiatives and can be a really great option. So encourage folks to look at the different government programs that are out there.
I think that as you're starting a new business, if it's the first time that you've done it, it's really daunting. And you're thinking to yourself, how on earth am I going to accumulate the financing that I need to make my dreams come true? And because we had done this combination of sources to finance our business, every single application is different. And you start off with your business plan and you feel pretty confident about it, and then you look at the requirements from different loans or different government loans or grants, and they're all different. So really, you're going to be editing your business plan for each and every one of those opportunities, and they have these different minute details that will trip you up. And so in my case, I had some challenges around my name because when I got married, I assumed my husband's name. And so I put in a lot of effort that I didn't anticipate, just trying to clear up how my credit was reflecting because of these name assumptions. And I think that's something that I didn't anticipate in starting a business as a woman entrepreneur. And I say that because I think that the majority of people who assume their spouse's last name when they get married are women. And it can be intimidating, and you put so much work into editing and communicating, oh, this is what it is, and having to produce things like your marriage certificate. That can be really frustrating. And anyone who's starting their first business and going to acquire this financing, don't give up. Come over, have a beer, and we can chat about it. And I'll say, okay, I know it's frustrating, but you can do this.
And Sarah Beth, you know all about red tape.
It's a very common joke. We love to talk about red tape around here, and people love to ask about the name. While there is a lot of red tape being in alcohol in Canada and working with 3 different levels of government around what we do, it's actually because we use red electrical tape to label everything.
Oh, cool.
There it is. Chris, if I can also chime in, I think one of the things that we've heard in our work with small businesses is 2 things around access to capital. One is, as you've heard from Joanna and Sarah Beth, this notion of education. Like, where do you start? How do you get that information? And the fact that all of those points of interaction change as your business evolves. So where you go when you're starting versus where you go when you're building, where you go when you're scaling, it's not easy to find that information. And so for larger organizations like MasterCard, that's where we feel we have a role to play. We've built a small business resource center on our mastercard.ca website. And I think you've heard I would say one of the biggest challenges for small businesses in Canada that we've seen is there are lots of great programs, and full disclosure, we're also a partner with Futurepreneur, so I completely endorse Joanna's comments about how great they are in helping entrepreneurs start and build their business. But when it starts to scaling businesses, and if we're going to really have small businesses make a positive impact on the Canadian economy, they need to scale. And scale is a challenge because if you think about the venture capital community across Canada, it does not reflect the diversity of the small businesses that are being started across Canada today. And just to call out a few facts, the vast majority of venture capitals are not women, they are men. If you take a look, in fact, in Canada, only 20% of venture capital partners are women. And to really bring this home, in 2020, there were billions of dollars given out to entrepreneurs globally. This is a global number from VC funds, and female founders received 2.3% of that funding. So that's 800 female founders globally got funding from venture capital funds in 2020. That's not enough. And there's no way until we start to have the funders, the programs, and the access reflect the diversity of our community, the diversity of our small businesses, that we can that we can grow that number. So again, from a MasterCard perspective, one of the ways we're trying to do that is we have a partnership with Peer 5. We've started, this is the second year of our small business fund that offers $10,000 in funding to small female founding small business owners to grow and scale their business. And the money is one thing. The second piece I would say is the notion of education, mentorship. How do you actually have a sounding board where you can get information and throw your ideas around that are tried to and tested from experts that have been working in fields that you're just trying to figure out, because most small business owners are the chief financial officer, the chief strategy officer, the chief operations officer, customer service, marketing, you name it. I'd love to hear
janitor.
Althea and janitor. A therapist we talked about the other day. Some people didn't realize how much therapy they'd be giving some of their peers and their team members. But I'd love to hear from Althea and Sarah Beth and Joanna. Like, does that resonate? Because that's certainly one of the things we're trying to lean in to help move the dial on how do we get more female founded small business owners, not just starting businesses, but growing them and scaling them.
Yes, I actually just wanted to add to that part of it is a confidence thing. When I had the idea of my business and I wanted to start, I wanted to prove to myself first that I had something solid. So I wanted to use my own money instead of risking borrowing money, because if it didn't work out, the responsibility of that. So I didn't have that confidence. Once I got the business going, and the online store I have is with Shopify, and they were approaching me to offer capital, which came during COVID, and they offer you capital based on your sales and profitability. That's what gave me more confidence to seek outside of my own money, which I was more than happy to do, because I wanted to take that risk, because, I believed in it so much. So it really does depend on where you're at in the business. Your confidence grows as your business grows legs, and then you develop a confidence to ask or to seek financing outside of your personal finances.
Yeah, Althea, you had mentioned bank financing, right? What was it like approaching banks?
Yeah, it was kind of an accident because I didn't even really ask them. What happened was, as the business was growing, I realized there were certain bank accounts that I needed to have and to sort of reorganize. I started payroll, all of these things. And when I sat down with my bank manager and let them know that I was looking at retail spaces, that's when he told me that I was eligible for applying for a business loan. And he was so patient with me, walking through the process. And when he looked at my credit score and all of that, he said, "You are more than qualified for it." And so that sort of, again, boosted my confidence to go through the process of receiving the capital loan. Our second location is going to be so much larger than the existing store, and it's going to be built from scratch in terms of renovations. So to have that support, it helps. And the bank thought that my business idea was an excellent one, because I could show the profitability and the growth of the existing store. So for them to give me financing for the second location, they had confidence that it was something that would work out very well.
Excuse me, do any of our other panelists want to jump on the topic of banks?
I've worked very closely with our manager at our bank, and they're infinitely useful. If you pitch an idea of something that you're thinking about doing, they're a wealth of knowledge around what you can access, and maybe they'll say, "Oh, that's a great idea. Have you thought about this?" And back to the confidence thing, I think that's part of it. And convincing yourself, if you think that is a good idea, it probably is. And, to reinforce that, write it down on paper to really convince yourself, and then share that story with someone else. And they're probably going to say, that is a great idea. And that'll help build your confidence. Share your ideas as you move forward, because it's probably going to catapult you into something you didn't expect.
I'll maybe
Yeah, I wonder if we could talk.
I'll maybe give a tip on banks if I can, Chris, because I've also had
Absolutely.
a little bit of experience now. One thing I wish that people told me is that I think banks can be incredible partners, and they're such a necessary partner as you're building and scaling a business. So much of building trust, I would say, when you are a small business owner, is managing expectations. And I think, especially in the early days, when you are really optimistic about what growth is going to look like, there's kind of this desire and tendency to put the most opportunistic case forward. And one thing I've learned along the way is you're building trust, and whether that's with investors or it's with banking partners, is to kind of have three different cases when you're forecasting your business. A best case, the one that you're pursuing, that you really want to get after, that you deem as success, a mid case, and a worst case. And when you're working with your bank, and I've learned this the hard way, you want to present that mid case, not necessarily the stretch case, because they're going to hold you accountable based on what you said you thought you could do. And so just managing expectations and always giving yourself a little bit of buffer so that you're consistently going with good news, positive outcomes, showing your track record against delivering against a plan, instead of coming forward with misses, and really building that relationship and that confidence.
Yeah, that's good advice. I wonder if we could talk about some obstacles too. Obviously, there can be a lot of challenges for entrepreneurs to access funding, and women face even more challenges, particularly people from BIPOC communities. So I wonder if we could talk about some of those challenges. Maybe Joanna, if you wanted to start about what are some of the, I know you have a sort of story that you've told about starting your business. I wonder if you could tell us about that.
Yeah, I've definitely ran the gamut in terms of pitching a lot of venture funds and different institutional investors over the years. When I started Nix in 2013, I think, the numbers that Sasha shared, they are abysmally, they're so low, 2% of venture capital going to women. I would hazard a guess that in 2013, that was probably half a point. And so having a product that's geared around some very taboo topics, menstruation, leaks, incontinence. I faced a lot of challenges in the beginning, pitching to men and having them understand the problem that it was that I was trying to tackle. I heard a lot of feedback that my idea was too niche, that the market wasn't there. And, we're talking about periods of menstruation. This is something that 50% of the population experiences, and yet it was being deemed as a niche idea. So that's kind of the original backstory. Like everyone's talking about, I built up my confidence. Every single time that you're going to ask for money, I feel like you have to put your armor on, because you're going to receive a lot of no's and a lot of hard questions, and you really have to be coming from a place of strength and building up your own confidence in yourself. And so the story that I think you're referring to, Chris, is I had finally made the decision in 2021 to go raise a significant round of capital for Nix. So we were setting out to raise a $50 million round. That's a lot of money. It was a lot of money for me at the time. And I made the choice to do that knowing I was pregnant and expecting to have twins. And I had the support of my board. I had really great partners on board who said, you know what, Joanna, the business is doing great. You can do this. Got a great brand, great team. You're growing 100% year over year. People are absolutely going to want to invest in this business. And so I went out there and I put myself out there, and I did get a lot of really positive feedback. But unfortunately, I received a lot of negative feedback too about the fact that I was pregnant and raising money. A lot of comments around, no one wants to be the last money in before she has twins. Is she going to take the money and run? How is she going to balance being a mom and running the business? And so I set a really hard and firm ground rule, which was any fund, I don't care what valuation they were going to give me or how big the check, if they questioned my ability to run a company and be a mother, they were cut from the process. And so it was a hard decision to make. I'm sure we eliminated a lot of people in doing that, but the story worked out. I closed our round on the Friday afternoon. At the time, it was the largest fundraising round raised by a solo female founder in Canadian history. The Monday morning, I was induced and gave birth to my twin daughters on International Women's Day. And the next day following, I received an email from Essity, who acquired the business last year, to acquire the company. And so I shared this story with the Globe and Mail. I was really nervous when I shared it. I don't know if your colleagues would tell you the same thing, but actually tried to have them not print it because I was concerned about the narrative that would be told about me. But it really struck a chord with so many people, because oftentimes we do face bias when we're raising money. People do, rely on underlying stereotypes or make their own judgments about what someone can and can't do. And it was really challenging and hard for me personally to continue to raise that capital amidst that kind of feedback and that kind of questioning. But I think we have to tell these stories. And what I like to say is, no is a really powerful word. As founders, we get told no all the time. Investors tell us no, customers tell us no, lots of people tell us no. But it's also a really powerful word when we're in the driver's seat and when we get to choose who we work with and we get to reward the kind of behaviors that we want to see from the next generation of funders. And so I will forever be proud of myself for saying no to people who had that kind of viewpoint.
Sarah Beth, I know that you shared earlier your challenges around when you changed your name. Were there anything else you wanted to share?
So I'm Inuit from Nunavut, and so I explored all of the opportunities for Indigenous people starting businesses and all of the financing and loan opportunities. But because we're in the business of alcohol, we weren't eligible for a lot of what's available and backed by the government. So that was really challenging. And, it would be like, oh, we can do this and we have all of this in line. This is a really great thing. But, oh, sorry, you're producing alcohol and that's making up, all of our business. So, there's a lot of no's. And just to add to that, every no that you've heard before is preparing you for the next thing that you're going to pursue. And I always told myself, everything that we're working for, it's not just my dreams, it's my ancestors' dreams. And all of those people who, came before us, they're supporting us and they're cheering for us. And I think that just adds to the confidence that we need to pursue our dreams and make them happen.
Thank you for sharing. Althea.
I think that's why I wanted to use my own money. I have to admit I was a bit intimidated about asking for loans at banks because I had a background in investment properties where I had the deposits, my credit rating was excellent, and I still got pushback with people from the bank asking me, why are you investing in so many properties on your own? And so I wanted to avoid that. And when I was looking for my first retail store, I got a lot of pushback from commercial realtors that just did not even want to see me because I didn't have any history of having a retail store. A lot of my contacts were overseas in terms of references. And I did manage to find a realtor eventually. And I even said point blank, I don't want to waste your time. I'm looking for a space, but it has to be small and affordable, thinking he would never find anything like that. And when we met, he even told me after that he just really liked me and believed in what I was doing. And he's been in the business for like 30, 40 years in real estate, and he had relationships with his clients. And he found me a tiny little store on Ossington with a landlord that ended up being so wonderful. Obviously, you have to show your credit rating, and I did have references from my suppliers from South Korea. But the one thing is my landlord and this realtor took a chance because I did not really have a long history of sales and profitability from being online. It was sporadic, but they believed in the idea. And, sometimes even when you're getting no's, you do find people who connect with you, believe in you, have confidence in you, even when you don't have it, and take a chance. It's there once you put yourself out there. And from that moment on, I realized that, if one door closes, another one opens. And if it wasn't for that realtor and my current landlord, my business wouldn't be where it is today.
Chris, I think what we've just heard is two things. One is there are systemic barriers to capital, to understanding regulation that really take a very broad ecosystem to overcome, and that's going to take time. But the other unique thing that is endemic to small business owners, entrepreneurs in general, and I would say female and underrepresented entrepreneurs specifically, is a sense of passion, a sense of values, and specifically what we just heard, which is easier to build, and it's one of the things we're so committed to build, is a need for community. This notion of confidence, this notion of thinking about the future generation, of sharing. I mean, the stories that you've just heard, this is the second panel I've been on in the last week where there are tears, which I think is just so incredibly deeply authentic, because that's where the values of these entrepreneurs start from. And there are places and initiatives that are helping to bring that forward. So whether it's our Peer 5 initiative, we do a lot of work with Powwow Pitch, which is focused on Indigenous entrepreneurs. It's finding those pockets where we can help build a sense of community, because as a larger organization, we can build that infrastructure, and then we turn it over to these incredible, thoughtful, passionate entrepreneurs to share their stories with one another, to share insights with one another. And that's really the power of community, which many entrepreneurs have told us, I need somewhere to be authentic and I need somewhere to get information. And so I would just say thanks to Sarah Beth and Althea and Joanna for bringing that very early on in this conversation, because it's so critically important. And it's probably one of the easier things to solve as we think about how do we get more diverse representation in our entrepreneurship community across Canada.
Yeah, well, I want to turn the tables for a second, Sasha. We've heard from some of the entrepreneurs about some of the barriers that they're faced. What, as a representative from a large company, what are things that you think that large corporations could be doing to help small businesses succeed?
So I think, as I've already mentioned, mentorship, training, access to tools. One of the things that we see is probably top of mind for small businesses or entrepreneurs after the fact is this notion of going digital and cybersecurity. As our world becomes increasingly digital, lots of big companies have many, many cybersecurity tools. So if there's a cyber hack, it's painful, there's reputational damages, but large businesses can recover. A single cybersecurity breach for a small business or an entrepreneurial business can put that business out of business very, very quickly. So sharing those tools, we've got lots of cybersecurity tools on our Small Business Resource Center. So that's one. Two, leveraging our reach and amplifying, the role, the potential of small businesses. It's what we do, as I've said, with Futurepreneur, with Powwow Pitch, with our Peer 5 partnership. And then the last one is also being a buyer. Right. So making sure that you have a diverse supplier protocol so that when you're looking at who are you buying from, is it representative? Is it broad? Is it diverse? And so I think frankly, the answer is there's lots of things that large businesses could be doing, and more importantly, should be doing to support what is undeniably the engine of our Canadian economy.
Did anyone want to follow up on any of Sasha's comments?
They're all going to give me homework and one more thing to add to the list of what large corporations should be doing.
I think, Sasha,
I take the feedback.
I think you touched on a lot of really important things. And I think the supplier one is so key. Like also deciding with your dollars who it is that you want to support and how you can use your platform to shine a light on some of these business owners. I worked with MasterCard on their most recent campaign, and 10 years ago, I didn't really see female founders in advertisements. I didn't see diverse women business owners in advertisements kind of being front and center for the businesses that they built. So I think, choosing who you put in your marketing campaigns and with your dollars is a really big step as well. And it does go a long way, because I think with Sarah Beth, with Althea, with myself, like community is part of it, but we want to see people who have done it before. We want to know we're not alone. We want to believe in what's possible, and to believe it, you have to see it many times. And so that, I think, is another thing that's just that's incredibly helpful.
What about this? If you could sit the prime minister down, whoever they are, in front of you, or you could sit, the CEO of a major pension fund or another big investor, and sort of give them direct feedback about something you wish changed in the industry, what would it be?
For me, it's the funding issue. I mean, we have to fix this. We will never succeed if we aren't on an equal footing when it comes to resources, and money is a really big part of that. And I just think that we are so incredibly far behind. And sometimes it takes mandated programs to have that take a step in the right direction. We have that with CanCon, for different within the entertainment and media landscape. I just don't understand why it isn't a bigger priority. I know someone asked a question about Futurepreneur being for young entrepreneurs. Are there programs for women over 40? I don't think that there are. And people are there's great programs that like MasterCard is initiating, but I don't know if there's as clear of a mandate there. And I think we have to continue to highlight this problem, that there are incredible businesses being founded by women and they aren't getting the same access to capital. Because truly, that's how we're going to drive change. Like, I had an exit. I'm now investing in women-owned businesses. That's a mandate for me. And like, we can help create a ripple effect. We don't need that many, but we need it to start. So I would really make a plea for that. I don't know what Althea and Sarah Beth think, but
I would say the application process is, there's still a lot of red tape. It's still very complicated. And when you're a business owner and you're juggling all of these hats, it makes it more difficult in the understanding of what is required for the applications. I also think that post-COVID, a lot of businesses have taken on a lot of debt in some cases, and I would encourage more grants being offered, depending on the business and where they're at. But a grant could support businesses at a time where they're really feeling the crunch financially, depending on the industry, especially if they're in an industry that was really affected by COVID. I mean, we're still seeing businesses close down. Even now, every time I'm driving along Queen Street or some of the major commercial locations, I'm astounded at how many closed businesses there are and how many advertisements there are for retail space. Maybe government support as well to support businesses with their leases. It has skyrocketed since COVID, so it's much more difficult to attain. And that's all I can think of at the top of my head.
In terms of the government, I think, as Althea said, reducing the red tape, and understanding that the beauty of small business is that it's very diverse, but it's diverse people who are going to be trying to access programs and financing that are made available by the government. And, a promise may be made, but it may not be accessible for one reason or another. And, while there are some opportunities for youth entrepreneurs, again, to address the question of someone who's over 40, there's a lot of really great ideas and really great experience from people who have this idea and would make really great business. And we need support. And moving forward and just recognizing that small business isn't one size fits all. It's very diverse and things need to be considered. And sometimes it's a conversation and, just realizing that diversity.
Chris, I have a request too, if I may, from our perspective, and it is better collective effort and coordinated effort. And what I mean by that is on two sides. One, from a small business and an entrepreneur's perspective, there are lots of programs out there. We've talked about some of them. Some of them are municipal, provincial, federal. And so there's a lot of different places to go. It's hard to find a single starting point. Startup Canada is doing some really great work in trying to bring all that together. So there's a single starting point for small business owners and entrepreneurs. And from a bigger business perspective, there are lots of big businesses that are leaning in to support small businesses, but we get asked, and there's input from government and feedback from government coming from various sectors, various departments, various levels. The more we realize that for Canada to have an economy that's going to grow, there needs to be some coordination and more of a team approach rather than having all of these programs, all of these opportunities, and sort of turning to our small business owners and say, use your entrepreneurial spirit to figure this out. We actually want them to be using their entrepreneurial spirits to grow great businesses, not spend time and energy figuring out where do I get funding, how do I find mentorship, and how do I grow my business. So this notion of a collective effort and a really focused effort across levels of government and across from coast to coast to coast from a geographical perspective, I think is really critical.
Yeah, we've had some really good audience questions come in, so I'd like to start looking at some of them. One of them was, what happened first for the panelists, the desire to start a business or the idea for the business? I thought maybe, Althea, we could start with you because you mentioned you had such a long career before you
That's
started.
a great question. Yeah. The idea to start, to have a business was first for me. And it took 10 years for me to get an idea that I loved enough to actually put my all into it. There was a lot of ideas that I hashed out over the years. And when you have a corporate job that's well paying, it gives you pause as well. So, you have to think about timing, and it's something that's very difficult to jump from a well-paying job and go for it. So looking back, I would advise anyone that if you do have an idea, what I did was I hashed out a lot of different ideas and I did research on the market. I'm always curious, and my background is marketing. I majored in marketing when I did my business degree. So the first thing I want to know is, if I have an idea, does anyone else have this idea? What are the successful businesses that are carrying out this idea? What does that look like? I also used to look at the markets that are ahead of Canada. So when the idea for me to get into selling Korean skincare was an accident. It was a skin issue that was resolved for me, followed by a trip to Seoul, Korea with my nieces that turned into research when we fell in love with Korean skincare. I have eczema, I have sensitive skin, I had severe cystic acne. And when I saw the results from these products that I was using from different brands over there, and to see the difference they had in approaching skincare, which was completely different from how we approach it in North America, I just fell in love. And then I thought, okay, this has helped me. Are there other people out there with sensitive skin or specific skin issues that maybe I could tap into? And that's how it grew from there, doing the research. And I saw that the K-beauty industry was massive in Asia, also spreading to Russia, India, and it was taking off in the US. The challenge was it was still new in Canada. The awareness was very low. So I had to do a lot of work when I started my business, which is why I'm glad I started off slow and used my own money. I don't think I would have gotten anyone to finance me at the very beginning because it was so new. And I did get a little bit of pushback with people asking, why are you selling Korean skincare? But once I went to the skincare conferences in South Korea and spoke with brands, they were so excited about entering into the Canadian market, about the diversity of the population, and that they knew that what they wanted to convey was that even though Korean skincare is manufactured in South Korea, it's for everyone. Once I had those discussions with the Korean brands, it was on. I didn't care what anyone thought, and I went from there. So sometimes you can have the idea of a business first. For me, it was the idea just to be an entrepreneur, and then the type of business came afterwards.
All right, Sarah Beth.
The idea of owning a craft brewery was always a dinner table conversation with my husband and I. We met at a beer festival. Our early dating days was always beer. We traveled all over Vermont, Quebec, Ontario, really consuming what we enjoyed. And we loved the experience. And we actually went to Texas on our honeymoon because we wanted to go to a very specific brewery. So knowing that we're not the only people who are like that. And even though Ontario is a very saturated market, when we were planning the business, there were over 300 craft breweries in Ontario, who we see as our competitors, because this is the whole market that we can sell in. So it actually came as like kind of a push. So I had a full-time job when I was pregnant with our first child in 2017, and I didn't have a job to go back to. And around the same time is when we came across a little bit of money, and we decided that we would start a business. And so infant in tow, I wrote the business plan, and by the time we were ready to execute, all of my planning was with the idea I wouldn't be available because I was pregnant with our second child. And knowing it was going to be exhausting, and we still did it because it was something that we really wanted to do and we felt passionate about. And according to the plan that we had written, we were ready to go. So I think a combination, that idea and the bespoke idea is what really set us apart and really drove our plan.
Oh, you're on mute, Chris. I'll go. I did not intend on starting a business. I had the idea for leak-proof underwear, period underwear, and thought it was a good one, and started researching how many people could need it and the effect it had on people's mental health, emotional being, and really felt compelled to start the company based on the idea. So I think you can go either way, truly.
That's great. Interesting practical question just popped in from an audience member. As a solopreneur, I haven't taken a step to become incorporated. I've seen that funding usually requires that you are incorporated. Should I be taking this step to open up opportunities?
I think that's such a personal question because there's tax kind of related implications that apply to this. And, I think sometimes the funding question comes into play because you do need to, my interpretation at least is you have to incorporate if you want to have employees, and you can do that through and there's different kinds of corporation that comes through that. And so I think a lot of it depends on, is this solo income for you? And does it therefore make sense for you to not be incorporated, or is it an initiative that requires building a team, et cetera? I would look for some tax advice there, probably. I don't know, Sasha and others, but
Yeah, I went to a lawyer when I was starting up the business, when I decided what to do, and sat and discussed with it. And because I had investment properties, they felt that having a corporation, having that kind of protection would be the best move. And also just down the road as the business grew, you could just do it initially. It's not very expensive, but it really does depend, as Joanna said, on the type of business that you have and what your 1-year goal, 5-year goal is. You have to kind of think about that and sort of take it from there. But I just wanted to do everything as much as possible upfront. And so that's why I chose to incorporate, because I had confidence that it was going to grow into something. So
we incorporated knowing the licenses that we would need are necessary for a corporation, but it's also really great to talk to an accountant and get some advice there, in terms of expensing and GST, HST, and all those kinds of fun things that you don't think about. An accountant can provide some really great advice on whether or not to incorporate.
that's an excellent point, because when you're incorporated, you do have to pay more to even process your taxes. So that's really great advice from Sarah Beth.
I wondered actually if we could touch on, there's something that Sarah Beth and Joanna, you both touched on which is some of the challenges and opportunities that can sometimes happen when you're an entrepreneur and you're having kids. That it can be it can be presented as an obstacle sometimes, and it, when I've talked to other entrepreneurs, it's also a time for reflection, a time for maybe maybe a time to change things up in my life. I wondered if you had any advice for any women entrepreneurs who are maybe watching this chat about kind of how you approach that.
Do you want to go first, Sarah Beth?
Kids and businesses are two things that will demand a lot of your time. And when you have both, it can get pretty overwhelming. And you will have moments where you're completely overwhelmed. And sometimes you need to reevaluate how you're taking care of yourself. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of your business or your kids. And I think as women, we often feel guilty if we're doing those things. Oh, I'm going to take an hour to myself to, go and get a workout in, or do some meal prep so that I make sure that I'm eating vegetables. I had noticed at one point, you're running and you're constantly going, and that adds to that overwhelming. So whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, if it's getting your workout in. I'm saying these because this is what I do. I'm like, oh, I need to exercise and I need to eat vegetables, and everything else can kind of go. I think it's really important as parents who have small businesses to remember to take care of yourself, and that can be really hard. And you may feel guilty, but you shouldn't, because you're going to fall apart otherwise. And that's not good for anyone.
Yeah, that was really good advice. So I second a lot of what was said. I started Nix when I was 28, so I didn't have kids yet at the time, and I put it off for a very long time because I thought it wasn't going to be possible for me to do both, and I was terrified about the reality of juggling something else in my life. And I had a great conversation with a woman named Jane Roos, who's really involved in helping a lot of the female athletes in Canada get funding. And she reminded me that one of the best things about being your own boss is you can create your own schedule and you can write your own rule book, and you can, this is when we were in office, you can have a nursery in the office and have a crib. And that really opened my eyes. And that's what I did pre-COVID. I brought my son to our office. My entire team held him, and he was loved by so many people, not just me. And it was untraditional and it was different. And it didn't look exactly like it would look at other places. But I think we have to give ourselves the grace to kind of write our own rules and create the balance that works for us in these unique situations. And it's wild and hectic. As Sarah Beth said, I had 3 kids in under 2 years. I don't know how that happened. It was not part of the plan. No one plans that. But at the same time, I feel so grateful that I have a lot of flexibility in my life to get to decide when I need to be there for my family and when I'm there for my business. And that's such a blessing. And so, yeah, I think just asking the questions and talking about it and learning how other people are doing it and giving yourself a ton of grace to not feel guilty, because you can't be great at everything.
Thea and Sasha, was there anything you wanted to add?
I was just going to add, I think, you picked up on women entrepreneurs and specifically entrepreneurs who are mothers, but I think the old adage of if you want to get something done, ask a busy person applies to entrepreneurs across a wide diversity, right? Whether they are moms, whether they're single and have to manage their own personal lives on their own, plus their business, if they are working full time right now and figuring out how to have a side hustle and move from full time work to side hustle work. Entrepreneurs they're a special group because they lean in and they do hard things. And I think the reason that we as a company and we as a society need to support them is not only because they drive our economy, but because they bring a perspective, they bring a sense of diversity, and a diverse and an inclusive country is a way better and a way stronger country. And so my hat's off, I think, though, to Joanna and to Sarah Beth's comments. You need to prioritize, and that's true whether you're an entrepreneur or not, but specifically for women, articulating that I think is really critical. So being able to say what you need and do what you need. I think it's safe to say most women know it. We think it. It doesn't always come out of our mouths, and it probably should more often, which is why this notion of building a sense of community becomes so critical, because when you see it and you hear it from other people that are going through the same thing, that look like you, that have similar experiences, it just becomes so much more validated and empowering. And that is, I think, the superpower of women and diverse entrepreneurs in particular, is representation matters. We don't have enough of it. The more we can build, the greater success we will have.
Yeah, I'm learning how to prioritize as we speak. My situation is a little bit unique. I've been recently diagnosed with cancer, and I'm in treatment. And at first I thought, I'm going to have to shut everything down. Like, I don't know if I can mentally cope with running a business while doing treatment. And it took a while, but I managed to get more support with staff, and to get support with email marketing and other aspects of the business. And I work from home, and I go into the store a couple of hours, a few days a week. And I think going through this treatment made me realize that I was running on empty for quite a long time, because I was running the business essentially on my own for a number of years through COVID and a couple of years after that. And it just made me realize and stop and think about how to reorganize my life, where I now can put myself first and have the business work around that. And I'm very thankful because I have a lot of support with family and friends. And I actually have not told my customers, so this should be interesting. Because I wanted to sort of keep it kind of private, and maybe once the treatment's done and I'm on the other side, to be able to then, make an announcement and, have more of a positive, inspiring note. But there you have it. So I guess I'm very comfortable with this group to be able to come up with this. But because I feel like I'm doing well and I have a lot of support, yes, you have to make yourself a priority, and everything else will fall into place.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that there will be, I'm sure that we have viewers who really appreciate hearing that as well.
Thank you.
We just have a couple minutes left. So just as a the closing question, just go around quickly. Are there any associations or other resources that you would recommend women entrepreneurs tap into?
It's not an association, but this is my second event with Sasha and the MasterCard team. In the past week, we hosted one on Friday at our office, and it was one of the most special women founder events that I've been to. Everyone cried. I feel like that's the common theme here, but I think that wherever you find that community, it's incredibly important. And for me, associations haven't always existed, but I've connected with people through Instagram, through social media, like with businesses that I love, walking into, Althea hearing you talk, or Sarah Beth hearing you talk. Like, if I'm getting a facial, I'm talking to the owner of that business, and the entire facial, we were just talking about their business. Like, you can find this community everywhere if you have your eyes open for it, and you can build it yourself as well. Althea and Sarah Beth, I don't know if you have other examples, but some of my closest friends I've made through Instagram.
It's always fun. I'm pretty Instagram forward in our brewery social media, so it's always fun to meet someone, and they just say hello and introduce themselves, which is really neat. Looking at industry colleagues, sometimes your competitors can be your best friends. You feel the same pains and you share the same joys. So I've never shied away from picking up the phone and calling the business and saying, hey, can I talk to this person? and they quickly become friends.
Yeah, I mean, I've participated in a number of collaborations with even my Korean brand partners who have been very supportive over the years in helping me with my business. And customers, I mean, once you've gained credibility with your customers, it leads to referrals, it leads to a long-term relationship, it leads to repeat business. And I've also had collaborations with other local businesses in giveaways on social media or participating during the holidays. So it's having a network that you can build up organically with your customers and other businesses has been wonderful. Shopify has shown me so much support over the years. It's been unbelievable. And even eBay, when I first started, eBay was a partner and they helped me with marketing and did a number of initiatives with me. So it just pours in, as you go, and it flows.
Well, I think that's a great message to end on. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Global Mail, I'd like to thank Sarah Beth, Althea, Joanne, and Sasha for joining us today. And I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for watching and for sharing your questions.